Their tent was cut open from the inside. 9 experienced hikers stepped into the Siberian night wearing almost nothing. Some died of hypothermia. Others died with crushed ribs, fractured skulls, and a missing tongue. There were no signs of a fight, no clear tracks of an attacker, just footprints leading calmly away from shelter, into the dark. In the winter of 1959, 9 young Soviet hikers set out across the northern Ural Mountains, skilled, certified. Led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, they aimed to reach a remote peak called Otorten. They never did. Weeks later, search teams found their camp on the slope of Kolatsiakl, Dead Mountain. The tent was still standing, but it had been slashed open from within. Inside were boots, coats, supplies, left behind as if abandoned in sudden urgency. Outside, in the snow, investigators found footprints, barefoot, in socks, in a single felt boot. They led downhill toward the forest. The original Soviet investigation concluded the hikers died due to a compelling natural force. Decades later, authorities revisited the case and leaned toward a slab avalanche, a delayed snow collapse that forced the group out. Disoriented in darkness, they succumbed to temperatures below -30 degrees Celsius. It is the leading explanation. A tragic accident amplified by extreme conditions. But the details resist simplicity. The slope was relatively shallow. Early photographs showed no obvious avalanche debris. The tent was damaged, but not crushed beneath tons of snow. Then there were the injuries. 2 hikers were found near a cedar tree, barefoot, wearing only underwear. They had attempted a small fire. 3 more lay between the tree and the tent, as if trying to return. Months later, 4 were discovered in a ravine under deep snow. These 4 had injuries that puzzled seasoned examiners. One woman, Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue and parts of her facial tissue. Another hiker had massive chest fractures described as comparable to a car crash. One had a skull fracture. Yet there were few external wounds to match that force. No defensive injuries. No signs of struggle. The medical examiner noted the pressure required was immense, but without the typical surface trauma, as if something overwhelming had compressed them. And then there was radiation. Elevated traces were reportedly found on some clothing. Later explanations suggested environmental contamination. Still, the anomaly remained. Witnesses in nearby settlements reported orange spheres in the sky during that period. Other hikers described strange lights over the Urals. Coincidence? Or context? The timeline deepens the unease. Covered diaries and photographs show the group calmly establishing camp in worsening weather. No panic, no indication of danger. Then something changes. The tent is cut open from the inside. They leave in an orderly line. The footprints suggest they walked, not ran. If an avalanche struck, why was the tent largely intact? Why were the tracks so consistent? Why didn't they retrieve vital gear once the immediate threat passed? These were experienced winter hikers. They understood that leaving shelter without boots in sub-zero temperatures meant death. So what could have frightened them enough to choose exposure over protection? Some researchers propose infrasound, low-frequency, wind-generated vibrations that can induce panic and disorientation. Others suggest military testing. The Soviet Union conducted weapons experiments in remote regions. Parachute mines or distant detonations could create shockwaves strong enough to cause internal injuries without visible external damage. No official record confirms this. More recent computer simulations have revived the avalanche theory, suggesting a delayed slab collapse could have injured those in the tent while leaving limited debris. It is plausible, but not complete. The missing tongue may be explained by scavengers and decomposition, the radiation by prior work in nuclear facilities, the lights by flares or atmospheric effects. Each explanation closes one gap and opens another. The most disturbing element is behavioral. 9 trained individuals made a unified decision to abandon shelter in lethal cold. Not one stayed behind. They moved together into darkness. That suggests a shared perception of immediate threat, something they all believed was more dangerous than the night. The skeptical interpretation describes a chain reaction: snow instability, structural compromise, confusion, hypothermia, injuries from falls into the ravine. The military theory proposes shockwaves, classified testing, and a controlled narrative. More extreme interpretations suggest encounters with unknown forces, natural or otherwise. There is no verified evidence of the supernatural, but there is also no single explanation that resolves every anomaly without strain. Even the phrasing of the original report, a compelling natural force, feels imprecise, as if naming the force was less important than closing the case. More than 60 years later, modern reviews favor natural causes. Yet doubt persists because the injuries were severe, the escape was deliberate, and the timeline still feels fractured. 9 people entered the wilderness. Only their bodies returned. On the frozen slope of Dead Mountain, something drove them from safety into darkness. And whatever it was, it left no clear signature behind. So the question remains, carried by the wind over Dyatlov Pass. What could terrify 9 experienced hikers so completely that they chose the night over the tent? And what did they believe was waiting outside